When I opened my door on Christmas Eve, I didn't expect to find my 69-year-old husband, my cheating husband, standing there with tears frozen on his cheeks. A year ago, he walked out of our home with a suitcase and a younger woman on his arm. And now he whispered my name like I was the last warm place left in his world. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I simply stood there, holding the door with one hand, steady as winter air. He kept begging to come inside. But he didn't know what I knew. He didn't know the truth I had quietly carried piece by piece for months. The betrayal he assumed I never saw. The financial move he thought I'd never discover. The final decision I had already made. Hi, I'm Evelyn Hart. And this is my story. Christmas Eve is supposed to smell like cinnamon and comfort, but my house held only the quiet hum of the heater. I had just set a kettle of water on the stove when a slow, shaky knock echoed through the hallway. Not hurried, not cheerful. A knock that carried shame. I opened the door halfway, the chain still hooked. There stood Leonard, my husband, or rather the man who used to be my husband, shivering slightly, shoulders hunched in a coat that looked far too thin for December. His eyes were red, swollen, almost frightened. "Evelyn, please," he whispered, as if my name alone might unlock the door. He looked older than I remembered. Not by a year. By a decade. His hands trembled when he reached toward me, stopping just inches from the doorframe, as though he knew he no longer had permission to cross it. I didn't know where else to go," he said. "Please, just tonight." My throat tightened. Not with longing. With the weight of everything he didn't know I knew. I didn't open the door. I didn't invite him in. All I said was, "Why are you here, Leonard?" He flinched at the coldness in my voice, something I never had before he walked out. But even as he stood there begging, something inside me stayed still. Quiet. Protected. Because this wasn't the beginning of his apology. It was the beginning of my truth. The last Christmas we spent together, Leonard was restless. Checking his phone, stepping outside for fresh air. Whispering to someone he insisted was a coworker. I didn't want to believe the ache building in my chest. At 67, you'd think betrayal would hurt less. Doesn't. It cuts differently, deeper, quieter, like a cold draft through an old window. He left on a rainy evening in January. No fight. No explanation. Just zipped his suitcase while I stood in the doorway holding a dish towel. "I can't do this anymore," he said. "I need freedom." Freedom from what? From bills? Marriage? The body of a woman who had aged beside him? He didn't answer. He didn't need to. He walked out and a younger woman, 22 years younger I later learned, was waiting in a car down the street. I watched the headlights disappear like a final slap. The first night alone was the hardest. The silence felt like a living thing. I slept on my side of the bed, but his absence pressed against my spine like a bruise. People said, "You'll be okay." But healing after a lifetime binds slowly, thread by fragile thread. Even then, I had no idea how much deeper his betrayal ran. 3 months after he left, I sat across from Mr. Harris, the bank manager who'd known Leonard and me for 20 years. I had gone in simply to update information, assuming life would remain quietly predictable. But Mr. Harris cleared his throat gently and said, "Mrs. Hart, I thought you should be aware of some unusual withdrawals." Unusual. The word settled like frost on my skin. He slid a printout across the desk. Multiple large transfers, each timed perfectly in the weeks before Leonard walked out. I stared at the numbers. My heart didn't race. It slowed, heavy, steady, bracing for impact. "He said they were for home repairs," Mr. Harris added softly. But no invoices ever followed. Home repairs. He hadn't repaired a single thing in years. I thanked the manager, holding the papers with fingers too steady, too calm. Shock doesn't always create chaos. Sometimes it creates clarity. At home, I spread the documents across the kitchen table, letting each detail sink in. While I had been cooking dinners and folding laundry, Leonard had been preparing an exit, not just from our marriage, but from our financial life too. My hands finally trembled, not out of fear but realization. He hadn't just left me. He had stolen from me. And yet, this wasn't the worst of it. Cleaning the study had become a habit, something to fill the quiet evenings. One afternoon, I opened the bottom drawer of Leonard's old desk, expecting dusty receipts and expired warranties. Instead, I found a thin blue folder with my name written in his handwriting. Inside were medical reports. His medical reports. He had been undergoing tests, serious ones, 6 months before he left. Heart irregularities, early arterial concerns, follow-ups he never scheduled. I sat slowly, pressing the papers until they bent. He told the younger woman. Trusted her with this. But not me. I wasn't angry. Just stunned. Grief has many shades. Betrayal simply adds another. Later that week, my elderly neighbor, Mrs. Collins, invited me for tea. She mentioned overhearing Leonard arguing with a younger woman months back. She said she didn't sign up to be a nurse, Mrs. Collins whispered. Said he was becoming a burden. A cold understanding settled in. He hid his illness from me. Was used by another. And still, he returned only when he had nowhere else to go. But the truth wasn't finished revealing itself. One afternoon in late autumn, Leonard's son from his first marriage called me. We hadn't spoken much. Leonard kept us at careful distances. His voice was hesitant. Evelyn, I think you deserve to know something. He told me that after Leonard left, he kept calling him, crying, complaining, painting himself as a victim. He claimed I was cold, dismissive, ungrateful. I nearly laughed. I hadn't pushed him out. I had begged him to stay. Then his son added something that chilled me deeper than December air. Dad tried to move the house deed into my name last year. He said he didn't want you taking everything after he left. My breath caught. But the transfer didn't go through, he continued. Something about updated records? A private relief washed through me. Months earlier, sensing something was wrong, I had quietly updated the deed with an attorney. Just precaution. Instinct. Leonard's betrayal had failed before it even began. His son apologized repeatedly, ashamed of what he had believed. It's not your fault, I told him softly. We trusted the same man. And now that same man was standing at my door, believing I knew nothing. Back to Christmas Eve. Leonard stood on the porch, clutching a crumpled grocery bag as if it held the last pieces of his dignity. Let me in, Evelyn, he said. Please. I made mistakes. Mistakes. The word felt heavy on my tongue. He tried to smile, but it collapsed into something desperate. I thought she cared, he whispered. Turns out she just wanted, well, you know, money, validation, youth to bolster her ego. I didn't comfort him. Why now, Leonard? I asked. He swallowed. I'm not well. And she didn't sign up to be a caregiver. There it was. Not love. Not regret. Need. You always had a good heart, he murmured. I know you won't turn me away. But he didn't know who I had become. I unhooked the chain, not to let him in but to step outside. You should sit, I said, pointing to the porch chair. His relief was visible. Until I added, we need to talk. Leonard eased into the porch chair, breath fogging in the cold air. I remained standing steady, calm. I know about the withdrawals, I said. His head jerked. What withdrawals? The ones you made before you left. The ones you tried to hide. His mouth opened then closed. A man caught without an escape route. And I know about the medical tests, I added. The ones you didn't trust me with. He exhaled sharply. I didn't want to burden you. No, I said quietly. You didn't want me to know. His silence confirmed everything. Then I delivered the final truth. And I know about the house transfer you attempted while I was in the hospital. His face drained of color. How did you? I updated the deed months earlier, I said. Your plan couldn't succeed. He stared at me as if seeing me for the first time. I'm not here to punish you, I said. But you don't get to return simply because your choices failed. So you're turning me away, he whispered. I didn't answer immediately. This wasn't rejection. This was closure. I walked back to the doorway. Inside, the kettle whistled softly, reminding me of the quiet life I'd rebuilt. Leonard stood, eyes wet. Evelyn, please. I don't have anyone else. You had me, I said. And you left. The simplicity of it settled between us. I handed him a warm scarf. Take this. Stay warm. He accepted it with trembling hands, waiting for mercy to become invitation. But I had no invitation left. "I hope you find peace," I said and closed the door. Not loudly, but firmly enough to mark the boundary I'd needed for far too long. Minutes later, Mrs. Collins called. "Come over for dinner, dear. No one should be alone tonight." I hesitated only a moment before saying yes. Her home was warm, filled with laughter. Not family by blood, but by kindness. Walking home under the glow of Christmas lights, I realized I hadn't lost a husband. I had reclaimed myself. When the door clicked shut, I leaned against it. Not in triumph, just stillness. A storm had ended, long overdue. I heard Leonard pause on the porch. For a moment I wondered if he'd knock again. But instead there was a long exhale, and then the soft crunch of snow as he walked away. I didn't watch from the window. Some endings aren't meant to be witnessed. Inside, the kettle had cooled. I reheated it, poured chamomile tea, wrapped my hands around the mug. Warm. Steady. I laid out the documents, the withdrawals, the deed, the medical forms. Once they felt like weights. Now they felt like closure. I mourned not for him but for the life I once believed in. But grief eventually softens into acceptance. As the evening grew quiet, I wrapped the pie for Mrs. Collins and stepped into the cold. The porch where he had begged now looked empty, peaceful. "He chose his path," I whispered. "And I choose mine." Mrs. Collins welcomed me with warmth, her home glowing with soft Christmas lights. The scent of rosemary and freshly baked bread drifted through the air. Her family greeted me as though I belonged. As we sipped tea, she leaned close. "I saw him at your door," she whispered. "He looked lost." "He was," I replied. "You didn't let him in, did you?" "No." Relief gently crossed her face. "Good. You deserve peace, Evelyn. You've carried enough." Her words soothed a place in me I hadn't realized was still raw. "Strength isn't always loud," she added later. "Sometimes it's choosing what protects you." I smiled softly. Maybe that was true. Her grandson played carols on the piano, and for the first time in a long time I felt included. Not as someone abandoned, but as someone valued. When I walked home, snow falling lightly around me, her words echoed. Quiet strength. When I returned, the house was peaceful, until the phone rang. I almost ignored it, but something told me to answer. "Evelyn." Leonard's son. His voice carried worry. "Dad called me. Said you turned him away." "Yes," I said. Calm. Certain. He hesitated. "I understand. Truly. But he's scared. Alone." Compassion didn't erase boundaries. "He made his choices," I said gently. "And so have I." Silence lingered, then he said, "I'm sorry he lied about you. I don't believe him anymore." His words warmed me more than I expected. "Thank you," I whispered. "And if you ever need anything, call me. You were good to him for a long time." After we hung up, the house felt lighter, as if a final knot had loosened. Some nights end with heartbreak. Others end with unexpected grace. Sleep wouldn't come. So I sat at my desk, pulled out a sheet of cream stationery and began writing. Not for Leonard. For myself. "Leonard, I hope you find comfort in the days ahead. Truly. But I cannot be your refuge anymore. The trust we once shared cannot be rebuilt. Not because of anger, but because the foundation no longer exists. I wish you peace. I wish you health. But my life is my own now, and I intend to live it fully." I folded the letter and set it by the door. Not to give him, but to release myself. The letter wasn't closure for him. It was closure for me. I turned off the lights and went to bed. For the first time in years, I slept without fear of tomorrow. Morning brought a pale winter light. Frost sparkled on the porch. I stepped outside and froze. There on the porch chair lay something small and familiar. Leonard's wedding ring. Placed neatly. Quietly. I stared at it for a long moment. The gold was dull from time and wear, yet it felt strangely weightless in my hand. This wasn't a gesture of reconciliation. It was surrender. An ending. A final acknowledgement of the life we once shared, and the life we no longer did. I put the ring in a small wooden box with old photos, not out of sentiment but as a chapter now closed. Inside, I opened the windows, letting crisp air fill the home. Smelled like possibility. My reflection in the kitchen window looked different, steadier, lighter. Today was mine. That evening I did something small. I rearranged my home. I moved the lamp to my side of the bed, shifted the armchairs to create more open space, replaced old photos with ones of myself, gardening, traveling, smiling softly into sunshine. For the first time in years, my home reflected me. Later I stepped outside. Snow covered the garden like a blank page. I stood beneath bare branches and let the cold kiss my cheeks. Peace settled over me. Not triumph. Not revenge. Just quiet victory. Healing isn't a single moment. It's the slow unfurling of a woman who finally remembers her own worth. As I walked back inside, I whispered a gentle truth. I'm home. Not the house. Myself. If this touched your heart, share it with someone who deserves better.